When you stop chasing, it doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels like withdrawal. It feels like you're holding your phone with a heavy hand, fighting the urge to explain yourself one more time, fighting the urge to soften your own boundary, because you're afraid they'll misunderstand it, or worse, they'll understand it perfectly and still choose distance. You're so used to love being something you prove, something you earn with patience, with forgiveness, with "I get it," with "it's okay," with "maybe you're just stressed." The moment you stop trying, your nervous system screams that you're doing something wrong. But listen to me. The reason it feels wrong is because you trained yourself to believe that connection only happens when you chase it, and the moment you stop running after them, you're forced to face the truth you've been avoiding, that you were carrying two people's effort on your back and calling it love. And here's what changes the second you stop chasing. The dynamic flips, because chasing is not just an action, it's a message. Every time you chase, you say, "You can disappear and I will still be here." Every time you chase, you say, "Your silence will never cost you anything." Every time you chase, you say, "I will fill in the gaps you create." That is why an avoidant can feel powerful without even trying, because your pursuit becomes their cushion, your reassurance becomes their escape route, your explanations become the permission slip they didn't even ask for. But when you stop, when you finally let the silence sit where it belongs, you remove the cushion, and all that space they used to hide inside suddenly becomes a mirror. Because silence doesn't just create distance, it reveals reality. It shows them exactly how much of the relationship was being held together by your willingness to overextend, to over-understand, to over-forgive, to over-function. At first, they might not react the way you hope. They might look calm, they might look unbothered, they might even look relieved. Because for someone who fears intimacy, your absence can feel like a break from responsibility. And I know that hurts, because you want your value to be obvious. You want your pain to matter. You want them to feel the weight of what they lost instantly. But their first response isn't the final truth. Their first response is often their defense system. The avoidant defense system is designed to make closeness feel optional, to make needing someone feel dangerous, to make vulnerability feel like a trap. So when you stop chasing, their mind tries to label it as fine, as whatever, as "I didn't need that anyway." Because if they admit it hurts, they have to admit you mattered. And if you mattered, then their distance was not neutral. It was a choice with consequences. Your silence forces consequences into the room, and that is what they cannot escape. Because your silence becomes loud in the places they used to control. They used to control timing, control effort, control emotional temperature, control how close things got before they pulled away again. They could come near, pull back, come near, pull back, and your chasing would smooth the cycle. You would keep the connection warm while they kept their feet near the door. But when you're done trying, they can't read you the same way. They can't predict you, and unpredictability is terrifying to someone who relies on distance to feel safe. They start checking, not because they suddenly became romantic, but because they lost the old pattern, and the old pattern made them feel powerful. They wonder why you're not reaching out, why you're not asking, why you're not fixing it, why you're not available in the same way. And what they feel in that moment is not just missing you, it's the collapse of the illusion that you will always be there to absorb their emotional avoidance. And this is where you have to be careful, because the most tempting thing in the world is to break your silence the moment you feel them shift. The moment they send a small message, the moment they view your story, the moment they react, the moment they test the waters, you want to respond with all the warmth you've been storing up, like, "See? I knew you cared." But that is how people get pulled back into the same dynamic that broke them. You think you're answering a message, but really you're answering a pattern. You're answering the part of them that wants access without accountability, closeness without consistency, comfort without commitment. Your silence isn't a punishment, it's a boundary. It's the first time you're letting reality speak louder than your hope. And reality says, "If you want me, you have to meet me. You don't get me by watching me bleed and calling it love." What makes your silence a mirror is that it reflects the part they've been avoiding, the part where they have to confront themselves. When you're chasing, their mind can stay focused on you, what you want, what you're asking for, what you're upset about, how you're too sensitive, how you're overthinking, how you're making it a big deal. And that keeps them comfortable because they can paint you as the problem instead of facing their own fear. But when you stop chasing, there's no argument to hide behind, no dramatic conversation to escape from, no emotional storm to blame you for. There's just the quiet truth that they didn't show up, that they didn't communicate, that they took your effort and treated it like it was guaranteed. The mirror doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it just shows them what they did. And people who run from intimacy hate mirrors, because mirrors don't negotiate. So if you're in that space right now, where your chest feels tight because you're not reaching out, where your hands feel restless because you're not fixing it, where your heart is scared because you're letting the silence stand, I need you to understand that this is not you being cold. This is you finally being loyal to yourself. This is you refusing to keep auditioning for a role you already earned. This is you choosing dignity over chasing, choosing peace over performance, choosing the kind of love that doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep someone close. And if they never look into that mirror and change, if they never come forward with real effort, real consistency, real accountability, then your silence will still have saved you. Because it will have ended the most exhausting job you ever had, trying to convince someone that you are worth showing up for, while your own heart quietly begged you to stop. Regret doesn't arrive like a thunderstorm for an avoidant. It arrives like weather changes they try to ignore, one small drop at a time, until one day they look up and realize they're soaked. And I need you to understand this, because when you're the one who loved deeply, when you're the one who kept showing up, it can feel insulting that they don't instantly fall apart when you finally stop trying. It can feel like your absence should hit them in the chest, the way their distance hit you. It can feel like the universe owes you a dramatic moment where they realize, immediately, that they lost someone rare. But avoidant regret is usually slower, quieter, and more layered than that. Not because you didn't matter, but because their emotional system is built to delay feeling, to postpone grief, to numb the very sensations that would force them to face responsibility. In the beginning, there is often relief, and I know that hurts to hear. But the truth is, when someone is afraid of intimacy, closeness can feel like pressure, even when it's healthy, even when it's loving. Your needs, your questions, your desire for clarity, your request for consistency, those things are normal. They are the foundation of real connection. But to an avoidant nervous system, they can feel like demands. Not because you demanded too much, but because they don't know how to stay present when love asks them to be seen. So the first stage of regret can look like, finally, peace. Not peace like healing, but peace like avoidance. It's the kind of calm that happens when you stop knocking on a door they were tired of pretending they would open. And if you watch that moment from the outside, you might mistake it as indifference. You might think, they're fine without me. But what's really happening is that they are temporarily protected by the very defense that has been protecting them their whole life, emotional shutdown. Then something shifts, because your absence doesn't just create quiet, it breaks a pattern. They were used to your effort filling the gap. They were used to you returning after conflict. They were used to you explaining what you felt, and then softening it so they wouldn't feel blamed. They were used to you being the one who kept the connection alive. And when you stop doing that, the old rhythm collapses, and that is when curiosity begins. They start checking the spaces where you used to be. They start noticing the silence in their phone. They start scanning, not always consciously, for signs of your attention, because your attention was something they could count on even when they didn't earn it. Curiosity sounds like, what's going on with them? But underneath it is a deeper discomfort. Why isn't my usual strategy working? Because avoidants often confuse control with safety, and your absence removes the control. After curiosity, irritation often appears, and this is where it gets messy, because sometimes the first emotional response they can access is not tenderness, it's annoyance. Annoyance that you're not chasing. Annoyance that you're not available on demand. Annoyance that they can't press a button and get the old version of you back. And they might send something casual, something dry, something that tries to make you feel like you're being dramatic for having boundaries, something that tests whether you're still emotionally hooked. Because irritation is a defense, it's easier to be annoyed than it is to be vulnerable. It's easier to act like you're the problem than to admit, I miss you. And this is why so many people get pulled back in, because they respond to irritation with more effort, with more explaining, with more proving, and they don't realize they're feeding the same cycle that made the avoidant feel powerful in the first place. Then the bargaining starts, and bargaining can look like sweetness, it can look like nostalgia, it can look like small confessions, it can look like, I've been thinking about you, or I didn't realize you felt that way, or I've just had a lot going on, and some of it might be true. But the question is not whether they can say the right sentence. The question is whether they can hold the weight of real change. Bargaining is the stage where they try to get the benefits of you back without fully facing what they did to lose you. They want your warmth back, but they don't want the discomfort of accountability. They want the connection back, but they don't want to address the distance that created the damage. And if you're hungry for love, if you're starved for reassurance, bargaining can feel like a feast. But it's not a feast, it's a sample tray. It's the relationship version of someone handing you a sip of water after leaving you in the desert, and you're so relieved you forget you deserve a river. And then, slowly, the realization hits, not because of one dramatic moment, but because the reality of you being gone starts showing up everywhere. They see something you would have laughed at. They hear a song you would have loved. They have a win, and there's no one to text. They have a hard day, and the comfort they took for granted isn't waiting. They come home to their usual distractions, and somehow the distractions don't feel as satisfying, because distractions are only powerful when you still have a person to return to after them. And this is where regret begins to burn, because they start to understand. This time it's different, and the difference is not that you hate them, the difference is that you finally chose yourself. Then comes grief, and avoidants don't like grief, because grief means you needed someone, and needing someone means you were vulnerable, and vulnerability means you were at risk. So they may not show it publicly. They may not admit it. They may even date quickly, stay busy, fill their time with noise. But grief has a way of finding the quiet moments, late at night, early in the morning, in the spaces between tasks, and grief is where they replay you. Grief is where they remember your patience, your softness, your loyalty, and they realize how rare it was and how casually they treated it. Grief is where they feel the weight of their own choices, not as a concept, but as an ache. And sometimes grief turns into panic, because panic is what happens when the avoidant realizes the door is closing and they aren't the one controlling the handle. Panic can look like sudden intensity, sudden vulnerability, sudden promises, sudden, I can change. And here is the truth you must hold close. Panic is not the same thing as transformation. Panic is fear of losing access. It can be sincere, it can be emotional, it can even be heartbreaking, but it is not proof of stability. Proof is consistency. Proof is behavior that lasts after the fear fades. Proof is effort that remains, even when it's inconvenient. And eventually, if you stay steady, if you don't collapse back into chasing, if you don't trade your dignity for a temporary wave of attention, the final layer of regret appears: respect. Respect is when they stop seeing you as guaranteed and start seeing you as valuable. Respect is when they realize your absence is not a tactic, it's a decision. Respect is when the story changes from, they'll be back, to, I might have lost them, and whether they come back or not, that respect is your victory. Because it means you have finally stepped out of the role of the one who begs, and into the identity of the one who is chosen, first by yourself. Your power was never in making them choose you, it was never in finding the perfect words, the perfect timing, the perfect softness that finally unlocked their heart. Your power was always in something far deeper, something quieter, something that doesn't need permission. It was in choosing yourself so completely that their confusion could no longer pull you back into the same cycle. And I know that sounds simple, but choosing yourself is one of the hardest things you will ever do, because it means you stop bargaining with your own pain. It means you stop calling bare minimum effort love, just because you're attached. It means you stop mistaking intensity for intimacy and distance for mystery. It means you finally look at what is happening, not what you hope will happen, and you say, with a trembling voice and a steady spine, I cannot keep abandoning myself to keep you comfortable. Because here's what happens when you keep trying to make someone choose you. You slowly become a version of yourself that is always waiting. Waiting for a reply. Waiting for clarity. Waiting for warmth. Waiting for them to finally be in the mood to show up. You start scheduling your self-worth around their availability. You start measuring your value by how quickly they respond, how sweet they sound, how close they get before they pull away again. You start turning love into a performance, and the performance is exhausting. You rehearse your messages in your head. You edit your feelings so you don't sound too much. You swallow your needs so you don't trigger their distance. And day by day, you become someone who is constantly negotiating your own heart, like your heart is a problem to manage instead of a truth to honor. Choosing yourself is the moment you stop negotiating. It's the moment you stop offering discounts on your dignity. It's the moment you stop explaining why you deserve consistency. Because the person who truly values you doesn't need a TED talk to understand that disappearing hurts, The person who truly cares doesn't need you to beg for basic communication. The person who is capable of love doesn't make you feel like you're asking for too much when you ask for the minimum. And the reason this matters is because avoidants, especially the ones who are not doing the work, rely on one thing: your willingness to stay in uncertainty. They rely on your hope. They rely on your patience. They rely on the fact that you will keep trying to translate their silence into something less painful. You tell yourself, they're just stressed, they're just scared, they're just busy. And sometimes those things are true, but the deeper truth is that they still chose not to show up, and your understanding became the place where their accountability went to die. So when you choose yourself, you don't just walk away from them. You walk away from the version of you that kept accepting inconsistency as a normal price for love. You walk away from the way you used to abandon your own needs. You walk away from the idea that love is earned through endurance. You walk away from the belief that if you're just good enough, patient enough, quiet enough, they will finally treat you like someone worth keeping. You stop trying to be chosen, and you start becoming the kind of person who chooses herself with such devotion that anyone who wants access has to rise to meet that standard. That is the shift. That is the moment the whole story changes. And yes, it will hurt, because choosing yourself feels like losing at first. It feels like loneliness. It feels like sitting in the quiet and realizing how much noise you were using to avoid the truth. It feels like missing them, even when they hurt you. It feels like your chest tightening when you see their name, and your fingers wanting to reach out, and your mind wanting to romanticize the few good moments. Because the brain does that, it clings to the highlight reel when the reality is painful. But choosing yourself means you don't confuse missing someone with needing them. You can miss them and still know they were not safe for your nervous system. You can love them and still know love is not enough if it costs you your peace. Choosing yourself also means you stop being available for the half return. You stop being available for the midnight message that says, "I miss you," with no plan, no accountability, no repair. You stop being available for the "I've been thinking" that never turns into change behavior. You stop being available for the cycle where they come close when they're lonely and disappear when intimacy asks them to be consistent. Because your heart is not a hotel where someone can check in when they feel like it and check out when it's inconvenient. Your heart is a home, and homes have doors, and doors have locks, and locks exist to protect what is sacred. And here is what happens inside the avoidant when you truly choose yourself. Not when you threaten to leave, not when you post something to make them jealous, not when you use silence as a tactic, but when you genuinely detach from the chase. Their usual power disappears. The push-pull doesn't work the same. The delay doesn't create the same control. The emotional fog they used to hide inside clears, and now they have to face the reality that your love had a limit, that your patience had a boundary, that your presence was a gift, not a guarantee. And whether they rise or not, whether they grow or not, whether they come back or not, you are no longer trapped in the role of the one who keeps proving. You become the one who is steady, the one who is calm, the one who is self-respecting, the one who doesn't chase because she doesn't need to chase to be valuable. This is why your power is not about them finally realizing your worth. Your power is about you acting like you know it. Because the day you choose yourself, you stop needing their validation to breathe. You stop needing their attention to feel real. You stop needing their response to feel worthy. You remember that you were whole before them, and you will be whole after them. And that doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. It doesn't mean you didn't love, it means you refuse to suffer for love anymore. So if you're standing in that space right now, shaky, tempted, missing them, questioning yourself, I want you to make one promise, not to them, to you. Promise that you will not return to the version of yourself who begged to be treated well. Promise that you will not turn your heart into a negotiating table again. Promise that you will choose the love that chooses you back, in effort, in consistency, in presence. And if they ever come back, if they ever reach out, let the question not be, do they want me? Let the question be, do they have the capacity to meet me? Because you are not here to chase someone into loving you. You are here to be loved in a way that feels like peace. And you only get that kind of love when you finally choose yourself first. Their calm can look like confidence. It can look like control. It can look like they are unshaken, while you are the one trembling. And that is the part that breaks people. Because you sit there thinking, how can they be fine? While your chest feels heavy, your mind keeps replaying conversations, and your heart keeps asking the same desperate question, did I matter? But listen to me, What you're often seeing is not peace, it's shutdown. It's a coping strategy. It's a nervous system that learned a long time ago that closeness is risky, that feelings are dangerous, that needing someone will eventually become pain. So they learn to go quiet, to go blank, to go distant, to act like nothing touches them, not because they are made of stone, but because they are terrified that if they feel fully, they won't know how to survive what they feel. And this is why you have to stop using their calm as the scoreboard for your worth. Because if you measure your value by how quickly they react, you will always lose. Avoidants are experts at delaying emotion. They can hold it back, push it down, distract themselves, intellectualize it, numb it, run from it, and they can do it so well that you start questioning your own reality. You start thinking, maybe I'm too much, maybe I'm too sensitive, maybe I asked for too much communication, maybe I shouldn't have needed reassurance. And I need you to hear this clearly. Needing safety is not too much. Wanting consistency is not too much. Asking for clarity is not too much. The only reason it feels like too much is because you are offering it to someone who experiences normal emotional intimacy as pressure. You are trying to build a home with someone who only knows how to live near an exit. Shutdown is not the absence of feeling, it's the fear of feeling. It's the emotional equivalent of holding your breath underwater, because you're scared of what will happen if you come up for air. And the longer they hold their breath, the more calm they appear, but inside there is tension. Inside there is avoidance. Inside there is a mind that keeps saying, don't need them, don't miss them, don't admit it, don't get exposed. That's why they can leave a conversation unfinished, leave you on read, disappear after closeness, and act like it's normal. Not because it is normal, but because their system has learned to treat connection like a threat. They don't soothe themselves by coming closer, they soothe themselves by creating distance. And if you are an anxious or emotionally open person, that distance feels like punishment, because your system soothes through closeness, through reassurance, through repair. So you end up in this painful dance where the more you reach, the more they retreat, and the more they retreat, the more you reach, until one day you are exhausted, and your heart says, I can't do this anymore. Now here is the moment that changes everything. When you stop trying, their shutdown starts to fail. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually. Because shutdown only works when they still believe they have access to you. Shutdown only feels safe when they believe they can come back on their terms, when it's convenient, when they feel lonely, when they want attention, when they miss the warmth. As long as you keep chasing, you keep proving that access remains, even if they do nothing. But when you stop, when you truly stop, when you let the silence stand, when you let the space remain empty, their system loses its favorite illusion, the illusion of control. And control is everything to an avoidant. They may not call it control, they may call it independence, they may call it needing space, they may call it not being ready. But the truth is, distance is how they keep the relationship in a temperature they can tolerate. You being done trying takes away their thermostat. So what happens next is subtle, but powerful. They start to feel off. They start to feel unsettled. They start to feel a background anxiety that they can't name, because they're not used to identifying emotional discomfort as grief. They identify it as irritation, boredom, restlessness. They'll say, I've just been stressed. I've been busy. I've had a lot on my mind. But what they're feeling is the beginning of emotional exposure. It's the moment their defenses are no longer protecting them from the truth. That your love was not guaranteed. That your patience had a limit. That the person who kept returning is no longer returning. And the reason this hits them so hard is because avoidants often rely on someone else to be the emotional anchor, even while pretending they don't need anyone. You are the anchor, and you are anchoring them with your forgiveness, your softness, your consistency. When you pull that back, they feel the drift. And this is where you have to remember why you stopped trying in the first place. You didn't stop because you stopped loving. You stopped because your love was turning into self-abandonment. You stopped because you were losing yourself in the process of keeping them comfortable. You stopped because every time you swallowed your needs to avoid conflict, you taught them that your needs were optional. You stopped because you realized you were begging for basic effort. And basic effort is not romance. It's not a bonus. It's not a prize you earn by being perfect. Basic effort is the minimum standard of a relationship that doesn't slowly destroy your nervous system. There is something heartbreakingly beautiful about the moment you stop trying, because it is the moment you choose your future over your fantasy. The fantasy says, if I just love harder, they will finally become who I know they can be. The future says, I refuse to build my life around potential that keeps hurting me. The fantasy says, maybe this time they'll show up. The future says, I will not keep reopening the same wound just because I miss the person I hoped they'd be. And that choice, that quiet, steady decision, is what heals you. Not their apology, not their sudden return, not their panic message at midnight. Your healing begins when you stop treating their shutdown like a mystery you have to solve and start treating it like information you must respect. Because the truth is, real love does not require you to shrink, to beg, to chase, to perform, to prove you're worthy of being met. Real love meets you. Real love stays in the room. Real love does not punish you with silence when you ask for clarity. And if someone's calm is built on your pain, if someone's peace requires you to be anxious, if someone's comfort depends on your confusion, then that is not peace, that is imbalance. And the moment you become done trying, you are not losing love, you are leaving imbalance. You are leaving the role of the one who carries everything. You are stepping into a new identity, the one who finally says, if you want me, you will have to meet me here, in consistency, in effort, in truth.